Previously on Survivor, Ritz Aisle 4. Josh won the tennis ball balance challenge, and Anthony was voted off at Tribal Council. 6 remain. Who will be voted off next?
Guys, is everybody ready for their next immunity challenge? First things first, Josh, give it up. Once again, the immunity necklace is up for grabs. For your next immunity challenge, I will read you a story, The Continuing Voyages of Norman Clayton. At the end of the story, I will ask you questions. On each of your boxes, you have 6 sides, 1, 2, 3, 4, the letter N for no, and the letter yes, or Y for yes. After I answer the question, everybody will make their best guess. Last person standing wins the immunity necklace. It's guaranteed a 1 in 5 shot at sole survivor. Let's get to it. Norman Clayton was bored. After leaving Ritz Isle 2 years ago, he and Roland Ritzman had been sailing around the world. His flagship, the Dorothea, was riding at anchor off a small Caribbean island. It was hot and humid. Dorothy Clayton was sunning herself on the poop deck. Roland and Jane were sitting in the shade sipping umbrella drinks. "Let's go someplace cooler," Dorothy said. Norman thought for a minute and said, "Let's go back to Ritz Isle." And everyone agreed. "It will be a long voyage, won't it?" one of the crew members inquired. "We're in the Caribbean, and Ritz Isle is in the Pacific Ocean. We have to go all the way around the tip of South America." "No, we don't," said Roland. "We'll go through the Panama Canal, and we'll be at Ritz Isle in less than a week. I was stationed there during World War II, and it only takes 8 hours to traverse the canal from the Atlantic to the Pacific. We can stop overnight in Panama City, and I can show you Fort Clayton and the hospital I worked at while I was in the Army in World War II. 1 hour later, the Dorothea was underway and headed for Gatun Locks on the east side of the canal. The next day, the Dorothea approached the first of 3 Gatun Locks, and Roland began to explain the history of the canal. The French were the first to try building the canal. In 1881, the first attempt to construct a sea-level canal began under the leadership of Ferdinand de Lesseps, builder of the Suez Canal. However, the French consortium was defeated by overwhelming engineering problems and mosquito-borne diseases such as yellow fever and malaria. The United States became involved in 1904 after helping the Panamanians gain independence from Colombia. Engineer John Frank Stevens presented a plan to President Theodore Roosevelt to dam the Chagres River and create Gatun Lake, 85 feet above sea level. 3 sets of locks would be built at Gatun, Pedro Miguel, and Miraflores to raise ships up to the level of Gatun Lake and then lower them back down on the other side. It takes 52 million gallons of water to fill the locks for a large ship transit. Stevens was the chief engineer from 1905 to 1907, when he abruptly resigned. Roosevelt then appointed U.S. Army Major George Washington Goethals of the Army Corps of Engineers to complete the project. The canal was completed in 1914, and the canal was formally opened on August 15, 1914, with the passage of the cargo ship SS Ancon. The original treaty between the United States and Panama over the control of the canal ended on December 31st, 1999 at midnight. Today, the canal is operated by the country of Panama and is declared a neutral waterway open to any ship in the world. Fees are based on the size of the ship and vary from $2,500 for a vessel like ours to as much as $450,000 for a large, fully loaded container ship. Incidentally, the smallest fee ever charged was 36 cents, charged to adventurer Richard Halliburton, who swam the Panama Canal in 1928. Each lock is 110 feet wide and 1,050 feet long. Since the newer supertankers and container ships are wider and longer, new larger locks are being constructed to accommodate the larger vessels. We'll get to see that construction as we travel the length of the canal. The rest of the day was spent traversing the canal, and the Dorothea shared locks with 10 other smaller vessels, while the crew was kept busy keeping shorelines tight as the canal water levels rose or fell. The Dorothea vibrated as the water flowed into the locks to raise the boat. Sailing into Gatun Lake and through the Culebra Cut, they passed under the Centennial Bridge, a graceful suspension design. After exiting Miraflores locks in Port Balboa, they anchored at Panama City. The next day, they all explored the old canal zone, the buildings of old Fort Clayton, and the hospital where Rolland was stationed in World War II. By the end of the day, everybody was pretty tired, and they all slept well as the Dorothea gently rocked at anchor. As the sun rose on the third day, the Dorothea weighed anchor and headed off to Ritz Isle, a 4-day sail into the Pacific Ocean. When they arrived at Ritz Isle, Norman and his band of merry travelers had sailed 26,000 miles around the world. But that is a story for another day. Each of you pick up your answer blocks. Question number 1. The French began the first attempt at building the Panama Canal in 1. 1871, 2. 1881, 3. 1891, or 4. 1901. It's got to be a number, Amber. The correct answer is 2. 1881. Billy is out. Josh is out.
That was a lot of information there. A lot of numbers. That was a lot.
Question number 2. The French Canal project leader was Ferdinand 1. Lesseps, B. Lesseps, 3. Deschamps, or 4. Leschard. Number 1, Ferdinand Lesseps. Number 2, Ferdinand Lesseps. Number 3, Ferdinand Deschamps. Number 4, Ferdinand Leschard. The correct answer is 2. Everybody is out. Risa wins community. You are safe.
So it was Lay?
Lesseps.
Yeah. Sheps?
Lesseps.
Should have remembered that.
They were all so close. I was like, I'm going to go with 2. I already had it up.
And after stumping me and going through dozens of questions on all the previous ones, you guys are out in 2. Good job, Risa. Tribal Council in 5 minutes.
I thought it would be important to remember the SEPs part. so that's the part I hung on to.
I was like trying to go with numbers. I was going numbers and dates.
1981, 1905.
I know.
That was tough. That was tough.
And then doesn't move.
Well, here we are back at Tribal Council. Mike, information overload?
My goodness, there was a lot to remember there. And on that second one, I remember the last part of it, just to reference little bits and pieces. And then when you said the day and lay, I thought, oh geez, 50-50, I'm gonna have a shot, but apparently it got everybody else too. That was phenomenal.
Eric, are you a scholar of the Panama Canal?
I am. I knew all that information except for I had no idea that the French were involved in the beginning, and I didn't know the name of the guy.
Josh,
Yeah.
you went out immediately.
First half of your story I kind of retained, and then the second half I just couldn't remember anything else.
He was singing to himself during the second half.
Amber, history was your strongest subject in high school, right?
I barely made it through high school.
Risa, I could tell the intense concentration. You were stuffing all those numbers into your head, and you wanted on a name.
A lot, and that one, I wasn't sure which one, and I had the number 2 in front of me, and I thought, I'll just stay here. So I got very
Blind luck. Well, you know what? Luck is sometimes a big player in this game. Billy, you ready to go back to the Panama Canal?
I'd like to go there and probably retain some of this information that you shared with us today. That was a great story, and
Yeah, it was.
a lot of numbers and just a whole bunch of information to retain. But
And in the past, you people have amazed me with how much you retain in the stories that I tell you and the numbers and the names. And here we go 2 rounds, and poof, it's over. And I think of all these questions that I saved up, and I don't get to use them.
That was a lot of numbers.
Well, a lot of numbers, a lot of information, a lot of agony, but now it's time to cast a lot of votes and see who survives this round. Risa, you have the necklace. You are safe. You cannot vote for Risa. Everybody else is fair game. Billy, you're up.
all right, now we're getting down to the last little bit of the group. You hate to start voting people off, but once again, it's part of the game. Everybody here is an awesome player. Had a great time. We still got a couple more rounds to go, but unfortunately, somebody's got to go. It's part of the game. Sorry.
wearing this necklace.
It's like the 4th time I voted for you. You just won't go away. All right.
All right, so this gets to the point where we start looking at strategy and allegiance. we've had allegiances and we've kept them pretty tight and close to the hip for the whole entire game. It's worked so far, but there's always a hitch. So we'll see how this works out. Sorry.
Well, let me go tally the votes. Okay.
They were playing in cahoots together to get
Once the votes are read, the decision is final. The person will be asked to turn in their buff. If anybody has a hidden immunity medallion and they wish to play it, now is the time to do so.
Where did you find that? I looked all over for it.
Unfortunately, Michael, this is not. This is not a hidden immunity medallion. It's a rock with something written on it. Nice try.
It's a happy face.
Nice try, but it may not be
Almost had
your
to.
salvation.
We thought it would be funny.
I looked all over the place.
Anyone else have a hidden immunity medallion? I'll read the votes. First vote, Eric.
You know that's spelled wrong, so I don't think it should count.
Next vote, Amber. One vote, Eric. One vote, Amber. Next vote, spelled correctly, Eric. That's 2 votes, Eric. 1 vote, Amber. Next vote, Amber. 2 votes, Eric. 2 votes, Amber. Next vote, Eric.
I feel a
3
tiebreaker
votes,
coming on.
Eric. 2 votes, Amber. 1 vote left.
How many tiebreakers have you done? Just one?
Oh no.
Next person voted out of Survivor Ritz Isle,
Turd.
Eric.
You turned on me.
I had the immunity rock.
I had the immunity rock.
Eric, time to give me your buff.
I give him my word. I wouldn't.
Well played, sir. Well played.
What happens when you trust your own team?
Somebody's got to go. There's no way around it. Nice job, Eric.
Notice? Hang on. Notice how I didn't even think about accusing Josh.
Oh.
I didn't even think about accusing him. I knew Mike stabbed him.
Well,
It's Wilson.
as the vote shows, family ties don't mean anything in Survivor.
Thank God.
Next challenge, 15 minutes.